The morning started like any other. The soft chirping of birds filtered through the curtains, accompanied by the faint, familiar scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Julie, my wife of 8 years, always rose early, her quiet routine setting the tone for our busy days. But as I shuffled out of bed, rubbing sleep from my eyes, I noticed something was off. The kitchen was quiet, too quiet. The coffee pot was half empty. A single slice of toast sat untouched on the table, and Julie's favorite mug rested at an odd angle. A faint smudge of lipstick on its rim suggested she'd been here, but there was no sign of her now. "Julie?" I called, my voice echoing in the stillness. No response. I wandered through the house, checking the living room and the office, expecting to find her scrolling through her phone or tidying something. Nothing. Her car was still in the driveway, and her phone sat on the entryway table, a faint notification light blinking. Julie never left without her phone. Never. I hesitated, the device practically calling to me. I picked it up, my thumb hovering over the screen. A message preview glowed softly. "Everything's ready. You know what to do." My chest tightened. What did that mean? I swiped at the screen, but it was locked. Rational explanations tumbled through my mind. A work project, maybe? A friend coordinating something? Yet, the tone of the message clung to me, uneasy and cryptic. Setting the phone down, I tried to shake the feeling. Julie was fine. She had to be. Maybe she was in the garden or upstairs, and I just missed her. But doubt crept in, steady and unrelenting. The empty house felt heavier than usual, the silence oppressive. I grabbed my own phone and called her number. It rang once, then twice, before cutting to voicemail. I tried again. Still no answer. I told myself not to panic. It wasn't like her to leave without a word, but there was surely a simple explanation. Mid-morning came and went, but the tension didn't ease. I moved aimlessly through the house, looking for something, anything, that might explain her absence. Her closet was untouched, her purse still on the chair in the hallway. Yet, something felt wrong, as though the ordinary fabric of our lives had been disturbed. It wasn't until I ventured into the laundry room that I found the first clue, a crumpled receipt sticking out of her coat pocket. I unfolded it carefully. The logo at the top was from a hotel downtown. A hotel? My brow furrowed. Julie hadn't mentioned going downtown recently. The date on the receipt was from 3 nights ago, for 2 drinks at the hotel bar. I tried to picture her there. Was it with a friend? A coworker? The thought of her with someone I didn't know twisted uncomfortably in my gut. As I tucked the receipt back where I found it, a knock at the front door startled me. Relief surged. I thought it might be Julie. But when I opened the door, I was met by a delivery driver holding a slim package. "Sign here," he said, offering me a clipboard. The package was addressed to Julie, the return label from a jewelry store. My pulse quickened. Jewelry? Why would Julie be ordering jewelry? The driver left, and I stood in the entryway, staring at the package. I wanted to open it. My fingers itched to tear it apart, to find out what it was and why she hadn't told me about it. But I stopped myself. Instead, I set it down on the counter, the questions in my mind multiplying. By early afternoon, my anxiety had turned into frustration. Julie was still gone, and her phone remained silent. I tried calling her again, only to go straight to voicemail. For the first time, the thought crossed my mind. What if she wasn't coming back? I shook my head, pushing the idea away. Julie wasn't like that. She wouldn't just leave. But then, what was this? The cryptic message, the hotel receipt, the jewelry package. All of it painted a picture I didn't want to see. I sat at the table, her phone still lying where I'd left it. My eyes lingered on the blinking notification light, my resolve crumbling. Against my better judgment, I picked it up again. This time, I noticed something else, a faint smudge on the edge of the phone, like makeup, lipstick. Julie didn't usually wear lipstick except for special occasions. The phone buzzed in my hand, startling me. Another text lit up the screen. "It's almost time. Don't forget the plan." My heart pounded. What plan? Who was this message from? I set the phone down abruptly, as though it might burn me. The house seemed to grow quieter around me, the air thicker. Whatever this was, whatever Julie was caught up in, it was no longer something I could ignore. The day after Julie's strange disappearance began in a suffocating quiet. She still hadn't come home, and my mind churned with a toxic blend of worry and resentment. Her phone remained untouched on the entryway table, its enigmatic text mocking me. I'd spent a sleepless night dissecting every interaction from the past few months, searching for clues. But every memory I summoned, shared jokes, quiet evenings, mundane errands, only deepened my confusion. As I sipped my coffee in the morning light, I noticed something out of place. Julie's planner, usually tucked neatly by the phone charger, lay open on the counter. She was always private about it, guarding her to-do lists and notes like trade secrets. But now, the page for this week was spread out, one entry catching my eye. Thursday, 4 p.m., meeting with M. Marcus. The name lingered, unwelcome and sour. Could it have been work-related? A casual meeting? Yet the detail gnawed at me, adding to the unease that had taken root in my chest. The package from the jewelry store was still on the counter, untouched. The temptation to open it was overwhelming, but I resisted. Julie would be home eventually, I told myself. She'd explain everything. But the rationalization felt hollow, a desperate attempt to keep my spiraling thoughts in check. As the day wore on, inconsistencies began to surface like splinters in a polished veneer. Her coffee mug from yesterday still sat on the table, its faint lipstick stain now a grim reminder of her absence. In the laundry room, I found her running shoes, caked with dried mud. Julie wasn't a runner, not seriously. She jogged occasionally, but never in bad weather. Where had she been? Then, late in the afternoon, came the first undeniable crack. As I returned from running errands, I found a folded piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. I looked around the neighborhood, but everything seemed quiet, normal. Unfolding the note, I read, "You deserve the truth. Check her laptop." My hands trembled as I reread the blocky, anonymous handwriting. Anger flared. This had to be a cruel joke? But who would leave such a note? And why? The suggestion burrowed into my thoughts like a splinter. Julie's laptop. She rarely used it at home, keeping it locked and password protected. It sat in her office, pristine and untouched. I paced the house for nearly an hour, fighting the urge. But the weight of the note pressed on me, unrelenting. Finally, I gave in. The laptop was where I expected, its gray lid gleaming under the afternoon light. I powered it on, and the login screen greeted me with a blinking cursor. I tried the usual passwords. Our anniversary, the kids' birthdays, her favorite childhood dog. None worked. Frustration boiled over. Pulling out my phone, I searched how to bypass laptop password. Most results seemed complicated, requiring tools I didn't have, but one caught my eye. Using safe mode to access the admin account. It was a gamble, but I had no other options. It took several tries, but eventually the desktop loaded. A neat grid of files and folders appeared, most labeled innocuously, quarterly reports, budget planning, and client follow-ups. For a moment, I thought it was a dead end. Then I noticed a folder buried deep within subdirectories, Drafts Archive. It looked ordinary, like a place for old work files. But something about its location felt deliberate, hidden. My stomach churned as I clicked it open. Inside were dozens of files, photos, documents, and a few videos. The first photo made my breath catch, Julie and Marcus at a park. Her hand rested on his shoulder, their smiles warm and easy, the intimacy unmistakable. The second photo showed them at a rooftop bar, glasses raised in a toast. My hands trembled as I scrolled through more images, each one shattering the life I thought I knew. A PDF labeled Plans caught my attention. Opening it, I found a list of notes. A Thursday, Marcus, 4 p.m. A weekend getaway, finalized details. A return jewelry by Friday. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't a mistake. This was planned. Then I saw a video file. My finger hovered over the mouse, hesitation gripping me. Finally, I clicked it. The screen filled with a grainy clip of Julie in a dimly lit room, laughing as Marcus leaned in close. The sound was muffled, but their expression said everything. The way she looked at him, it was the kind of look I thought was reserved for me. I slammed the laptop shut, ball rising in my throat. My hands clenched into fists as rage coursed through me. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a calculated, deliberate lie. The hours blurred after that, my thoughts a whirlwind of anger and disbelief. By the time Julie finally came home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table, her phone and the folded note in front of me. She walked in with an air of nonchalance, tossing her keys on the counter. "Hey," she said lightly. "Sorry I've been MIA. Work's been crazy." I stared at her, the weight of what I'd seen pressing down on my chest. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice low and tight. She paused, glancing at me with mild surprise. "I told you. Meetings, errands, the usual." I nodded slowly, clenching my fists under the table. "And Marcus? Was he part of the usual?" The color drained from her face. It was subtle but undeniable. For a moment, she stood frozen, her casual demeanor cracking. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't answer. Instead, I slid her phone across the table. "You know what to do," I said, mimicking the words from the message. Her eyes widened, guilt flashing across her face. The silence that followed was deafening, her expression saying more than any words ever could. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The evening after Julie came home felt like walking through a minefield. She moved around the house, humming softly as she tidied the kitchen, her demeanor maddeningly normal. My mind, however, was anything but. The images from her laptop looped endlessly in my head. The photos weren't damning on their own, just Julie and Marcus in what could be friendly, albeit slightly too familiar, moments. But paired with the text message and her reaction to my questions, the pieces pointed to something deeper, something she hadn't told me. Was I overreacting? Could there be an innocent explanation for everything? I wanted to believe that. Julie had never given me a reason to doubt her before, but as much as I tried to convince myself, the doubts kept gnawing at me. Her pale face when I mentioned Marcus, the plans on her laptop, the necklace from the jewelry store, still unopened on the counter. By the time the kids were in bed, my head felt like it was going to split open from the tension. I needed to talk to someone. Keeping everything bottled up was driving me crazy. I called my brother, Eric. Eric had a way of staying level-headed no matter the situation. He'd been through his own share of messy relationships, and I trusted his judgment more than anyone else's. If anyone could help me sort through this, it was him. "Hey, Mark," he answered, his voice concerned. "What's going on? You sound off." I hesitated, unsure how to start. "It's Julie. I think something's going on with her." "What do you mean?" I laid everything out. The text message, the unexplained absences, the photos, and her reaction when I confronted her. Eric listened quietly, his occasional murmurs of acknowledgement the only indication he was still there. When I finished, there was a long pause. "Man, that's a lot," he said finally. "Have you asked her directly about all of this?" "I tried," I said, my voice tight. She acted like it was nothing. But Eric, the way she looked at him in those photos, she looked happy. Happier than I've seen her in a long time. Eric sighed. "Look, Mark, you need to get clarity. Sit her down, lay everything out. If she's guilty, she'll slip up. If she's not, well, at least you'll know." "And what if she is guilty?" I asked, my throat tightening. "Then you'll have to decide what you're willing to do about it. But either way, you deserve the truth." That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while Julie slept beside me. The fear of what I might hear if I pressed her further kept me paralyzed. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe us. But the trust that had once been the foundation of our marriage felt like it was crumbling beneath me. The next morning, after the kids were at school, I decided to take Eric's advice. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the dishwasher. Julie was at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. "Julie," I said, sitting across from her. My voice was steady, though my palms were clammy. She looked up, her expression wary. "What's going on?" "I need you to be honest with me," I said, meeting her eyes. "No more half-truths. No more dodging." Her brow furrowed. "Mark, what are you talking about?" "I know about Marcus," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "I saw the photos on your laptop." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she might deny it. Instead, she sighed, her shoulders slumping. You went through my laptop? That's what you're focused on? I shot back, frustration bubbling over. Julie, I'm asking you if there's something going on with him. She hesitated, and the tension between us felt like a living thing. Finally, she said, It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is, I demanded. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks a hell of a lot like you're hiding something. Before she could answer, the doorbell rang. I stood, my heart pounding. The timing felt surreal. As I opened the door, a delivery man handed me a package. It was addressed to Julie, and the sender's name made my stomach drop. Marcus Green. I turned to look at her, holding the package like it was a grenade. Care to explain this? Her face went pale. Mark, it's not, she started, but her words faltered. What's in it? I demanded, tearing it open before she could respond. Inside was a small velvet jewelry box. I opened it to reveal a silver necklace with a simple heart pendant. Engraved on the back were the words, Stay strong. Her lip trembled. It's not what it looks like. Then explain it. I shouted, my voice raw. Because right now, it looks like my wife is emotionally involved with another man. She reached out as if to touch my arm, but I pulled away. Tears filled her eyes as she said, Mark, please, let me explain. Then start talking. And this time, I want the truth. Julie took a deep breath, her hands trembling. Marcus and I, we're not having an affair, but I've been leaning on him. He's been there for me when I felt like I couldn't talk to you. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Why couldn't you talk to me? I don't know, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. You're always so busy. And when I started feeling lost, I didn't want to burden you. So you turned to him instead? I asked, my voice breaking. You chose him over me? She nodded, her voice cracking. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I stared at her, my chest heaving as the weight of her words pressed down on me. The necklace in my hand felt heavier than it should have, a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. I need time to think, I said finally, my voice hollow. I can't deal with this right now. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her standing there in tears. For the first time, I wasn't sure if we could come back from this. The necklace sat on the kitchen table, its tiny heart-shaped pendant catching the light as if mocking me. Julie had gone silent after her tearful admission the day before, retreating into our bedroom and closing the door behind her. I let her go. I needed the space as much as she did. Now, as I sat alone in the kitchen, turning the pendant over in my fingers, her words replayed in my mind. Marcus listens. He doesn't judge. The explanation felt weak, a half-truth at best. She claimed nothing physical had happened, but her relationship with Marcus had already crossed a line. A heart-shaped necklace didn't scream, just friends. I resolved to dig deeper. If Julie wouldn't give me the whole truth, I would find it myself. The next morning was quiet, the kind of silence that felt heavy and suffocating. Julie avoided me, retreating to the kids' room to busy herself while I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, stewing over the unanswered questions. The tension in the house was unbearable, every small sound amplified by the weight of what wasn't being said. The doorbell rang, jarring me out of my thoughts. I rose to answer it, feeling a strange sense of foreboding. On the porch stood a man in a suit, holding a manila envelope. Mr. Bennett? He asked. Yes, I replied warily. He handed me the envelope. You've been served, he said, nodding curtly before walking back to his car. I stared at the envelope in my hands, dread coiling in my stomach. Closing the door, I opened it carefully and pulled out a thick stack of papers. The bold lettering at the top read, Notice of Civil Complaint. My eyes scanned the document. Marcus Green was listed as the plaintiff. Julie and I were both named as defendants. The cause of action, breach of contract and misrepresentation. What the hell is this? I muttered, flipping through the pages. Julie walked into the kitchen, stopping short when she saw the papers in my hand. Her face went pale. Mark, I can explain. I didn't let her finish. Explain what? I snapped, holding up the document. That Marcus is suing us? That you dragged me into this mess without telling me? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I turned back to the document and read aloud. The plaintiff, Marcus Green, alleges that the defendants entered into a private loan agreement wherein the plaintiff provided financial assistance to the defendant Julie Bennett in the sum of $20,000. The agreement specified repayment in full within 90 days. I looked up at her, my voice rising. $20,000, Julie? What were you thinking? Tears welled in her eyes as she stammered, I didn't mean for it to get this far. I thought I could pay him back before you found out. How? I demanded. With what money? You've already drained thousands from our savings. Why didn't you come to me? I was ashamed, she whispered, wiping at her tears. I didn't want you to think I couldn't handle things. I slammed the papers onto the table. And now? Now we're being sued for $25,000, including penalties and legal fees, because you didn't want to tell me the truth? Do you have any idea what you've done? She sank into a chair, her head in her hands. I thought I could fix it, she said weakly. Marcus said he needed help. He promised he'd pay me back, but then things got worse, and I didn't know what to do. My laugh was bitter. So, instead of stopping, you kept going? And now he's turning around and suing us? Her silence was damning. I picked up the papers again, scanning the next section. Despite repeated attempts by the plaintiff to recover the loan, the defendants failed to comply with the repayment terms. The plaintiff is seeking damages in the amount of $25,000. I looked at her, my voice cold. He's suing us, Julie. Us. Not just you. This is my life, my reputation, my family that you've put at risk. Her lip trembled, but she didn't argue. For the first time, I saw the full weight of her guilt in her eyes. It wasn't enough. I need the truth, I said, my voice like steel. All of it. No more lies, no more half-truths. What else are you hiding? She hesitated, and I thought she might refuse. But then she whispered, it wasn't just the loan. He said if I didn't help him, he'd make things worse for us. What does that mean? I demanded. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. I think he planned this, she admitted. From the beginning. The money, the promises, it was all just a setup. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Marcus hadn't just manipulated her. He trapped us both. The lawsuit changed everything. For days, Julie and I barely spoke. The house felt heavy with tension, each glance between us a silent exchange of blame, regret, and unspoken questions. She looked worn, her confidence replaced by guilt and unease. I felt like a stranger in my own marriage, trying to reconcile the woman I loved with the decisions that had brought us here. The legal notice claimed that Marcus had used Julie to funnel money through our accounts, masking fraudulent business dealings. My name was listed because our accounts were joint. It wasn't just about the money, it was about trust. And ours had been fractured beyond recognition. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, I found Julie in the living room. She was staring at the necklace on the coffee table, her fingers lightly brushing the heart-shaped pendant. The words engraved on it, to Jay, with love, caught the light like a cruel reminder of everything we'd lost. Julie, I said, my voice breaking the silence. She turned to me, her face etched with exhaustion. Mark, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I sat down across from her, the lawsuit papers clutched in my hand. I need to know everything, I said. No more half-truths, no more evasions. Just the truth. She nodded, her voice trembling as she spoke. I didn't know Marcus was lying. When he first asked for help, I thought I was doing the right thing, helping a friend. But when the money ran out and he asked for more, I should have stopped. I should have told you. Tears streamed down her face. I was scared, Mark. Scared of what you'd think of me. Scared of how much I'd already messed up. And the texts? The lunches? The necklace? I pressed, my voice tight. You let him into your life in ways you never should have. She looked down at her hands. I leaned on him, yes, more than I should have. But it was never physical, Mark. I swear. I made terrible mistakes, but I never stopped loving you. Her words hung in the air between us. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hold on to the pieces of our marriage that still felt real, but the weight of everything threatened to crush me. Before I could respond, The doorbell rang. Julie looked at me, fear flashing in her eyes. "Is it him?" she whispered. I shook my head. "Stay here," I said, rising to answer the door. When I opened it, Marcus stood on the porch. He looked disheveled, his suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He held a folder in his hands, which he extended toward me. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice low. "Mark," he said hoarsely, "I came to fix this." "Fix this?" I scoffed. "You've done nothing but destroy my life." "I know," he said, his voice trembling. "I know I messed up, but I'm here to take responsibility. Inside this folder is everything the court needs to clear Julie's name and yours. Bank statements, contracts, proof that she had no idea what I was doing. I'll testify if I have to." I stared at him, my anger warring with disbelief. Why now? Why not before this spiraled out of control? He looked down at the ground. "Because I was a coward. But I can't run from this anymore." I took the folder from him, my hands trembling. "If you're lying—" "I'm not," he interrupted. "This is the truth. I owe you that much." I closed the door without another word and returned to the living room. Julie looked up at me, her eyes wide with apprehension. What did he want? I held up the folder. "He says this clears your name." She stared at it, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Do you believe him?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'll find out." The next day, I took the folder to our attorney. Inside were meticulously organized documents, proof that Marcus had funneled money through Julie's accounts without her knowledge, forged signatures on contracts, and emails detailing his fraudulent schemes. Julie's name had been used, but she was, as he claimed, a victim, not a conspirator. By the end of the week, the lawsuit was dropped. Marcus turned himself in, leaving Julie and me to pick up the pieces of what remained. That Saturday, Julie and I sat together on the back porch, the kids playing in the yard. The tension between us had eased, but the scars of the past weeks were still fresh. "I don't know how to move forward from this," I admitted, staring out at the setting sun. Julie reached for my hand, her touch tentative. "Neither do I, but I want to try. I want to fix this, us." I turned to her, the pain in her eyes mirroring my own. "It's not just about what happened, Julie. It's about why it happened. We let things fall apart long before Marcus showed up." She nodded, her tears glistening in the fading light. "I know. I see that now. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'm still the woman you fell in love with." For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't a promise of a perfect future, but it was a start. "We'll take it one day at a time," I said softly. "But this doesn't get fixed overnight." She squeezed my hand. "I'm not asking for overnight. I'm asking for a chance." I nodded, the weight in my chest lifting just slightly. "Then let's start there." As the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat in silence, watching our children laugh and play. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a beginning. And for now, that was enough.